Hello, I'm Merhnaz Campbell, CEO and founder of Cheemia ReSET, and I'm excited to have you here. I'm really passionate about helping pharma field professionals to feel confident about using technology to improve the quality of their engagement with healthcare professionals. And for me, is the human side of digital transformation, enabling people to use technology is what I'm really curious about. And to explore this topic, I've been interviewing inspiring pharma leaders to learn from them and share their perspective. I just came back from Next Pharma Summit in Dubrovnik, and it was so refreshing to see it was all about people, not technology. It was about enabling people to use technology. And I felt for the first time I was surrounded by a group of people who also cared about people as much as I do. And I'm delighted to have Rob Koster, Rob, Director of Customer Experience at Havas Health You, with me today. Hi, Rob. How you doing?
Hi, Manaz. Thank you so much for inviting me on here. I'm doing really good, thank you.
Perfect. Let me just tell you a little brief introduction for Rob. He helps life science teams transform customer experience, and customer experience is his new title. He's a director of customer experience, and he does that through using tech, data, AI solutions, and through thought leadership. I've checked him out on LinkedIn, as you do, and he's a proud father of. He's a proud father, and according to his LinkedIn profile, he's a rubbish musician. We were chatting about this earlier on, and I think it's really funny. Like, it's a very British thing to do. If you're good at something, you say I'm rubbish, right, Rob? I bet you're really good at music. Are you?
No, I'm not. I'm not brilliant at it. I can break out a tune. Technically, I'm not great, but I don't really care because
So what do you
I love
play?
playing it. Bit of guitar, bit of piano, bit of drums, bit of most things. So I just really like playing music.
The fact that you play three musical instruments means that you're really good. I mean, if you were in America, you'd be saying, "Oh, I'm really awesome," but because you're British, you say, "I'm rubbish," right?
Yeah,
So, Rob,
you've got to be understated. You can't be
yeah,
too
and
arrogant.
surprise people with your genius. Uh, so,
Yeah.
so Rob, tell me a little bit about your career history. Even since first we announced this, you've changed jobs. You started a new job on Monday. So tell us about your career history, but also tell me what you're up to in Havas Health You.
Yeah. So my career has been pretty diverse. I think I ran a pub. I've been an ice cream man. I've worked in market stalls and shops, and for big companies like IMS, now IQVIA. Working client side, I was seconded to Pfizer for a couple of years. In the healthcare space, been agency side. I've been tech side. So recently leaving Tangent 90 and at places like Aptana. But I think where there's been a consistency across all of them is I've gone with that human approach. So, it really speaks to where we are right now and trying to change things, to innovate, to drive forward. Because if we're not moving forwards, then we're basically going backwards.
Yeah.
So, in truth, have I found what I'm looking for personally in the roles? Maybe not, but I feel as though I'm getting closer. And I think with the recent move to Havas in the CX space, that really is kind of where my passion is right now. And I know that Havas is a great organization where hopefully I can continue to make more of a difference.
Mm. Oh, I came across them last week. They did an interesting presentation. I think it was a different team in Havas. They were talking about mental health for healthcare professionals, and it was very moving. I was really impressed with the topic they opened up, and I've been posting about it since then as well. But I'd like to find out more about them, so maybe you can educate me. But going back is interesting because I actually met you online, and one of the reasons I wanted to interview you because I felt you had a refreshing perspective. You really cared about the humans. And what we need to do to make sure humans getting the most out of the technology rather than just focusing on technology. And I think some of the conversations that me I've seen you being engaged and involved in that grabbed my interest was everybody's talking about omni-channel, multi-channel. And sometimes they even use the two words interchangeably as if they're both the same thing. I was talking to somebody, I think they said they interviewed someone, and in the interview they asked them what's the difference between omnichannel and multi-channel. It was a marketing position, and they said nothing, they're the same thing. So I'm just curious to know what's your views, what's the difference, and maybe you can explain it articulately better than what other people are using to describe the two words.
Yeah, no problem. So in my mind, there are two answers to this question. So there's the practical answer, and then there's the strategic, more kind of higher level answer. So from a practical level, in my mind, multi-channel is more outreach. So if you're a company, pharma company, any company, you want to try and use the channels that are available and where your customers are, and that could be in person, that could be email, that could be social media, it could be website, it could be whatever. But you have to create content that then is fit for purpose within those channels. So that's what multi-channel is outreach. Omni-channel is more the customer experience. So they should be getting the same experience across any channel. Whether it be a website, email, any of those channels, it should resonate in the same way. And that's where it's more difficult. The other answer to this is, if you think about it from a mindset point of view, they're both similar in that, I would say omni-channel supersedes multi-channel, because again, it should be aligned from the quality point of view of the experience. But we'll get to it a bit later.
Yeah.
But I think having that omni-channel customer experience first mindset is one of the hardest things that we've got to overcome in healthcare and pharma. Actually doing it, not just talking about it.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because last week Dario at Next Pharma actually talked about customer experience, and he shared his customer experience of visiting Harry Potter world, and how his experience went through a cycle, but he left the experience being really happy and delighted. So I think in pharma, we don't often focus on that. We don't measure it. So if you don't measure, you're not going to focus on it. So I'll be interested to explore more about your thoughts on this. Hi, Keith. I think you joined us. It's good to have you here. Maybe you can share your perspective on the chat, Keith, so we can, benefit from your perspective on it. But I was going to ask you, Rob, how do you believe pharma can best improve the customer experience?
I think this is a massive question, and I think it could take up the whole of our chat
Right.
and more. But I think echoing what I just said. So I think the mindset needs to change, and I think where it needs to change is there's a potential for CX to be another buzzword, like an omni-channel, like a multi-channel, like a modular content, and other buzzes that have come over the years. But I think that having a customer experience to me just means customer first. Thinking of the customer, making sure that what you're doing is what they want and need. I think if we can change that mindset, I think it will go a long way. It will go, 50% of the way there to actually doing what we want.
And who's the customer? Is the customer HCP or is the patient?
Both. I was actually speaking to someone else quite recently about pharma tend to lead with a B2C style approach to marketing, where the HCP is the customer. But really, what doctors want from pharma companies and everyone else is more support to give to their patients. So should we be thinking about, or at least balancing the view on marketing and providing doctors with resources to support their patients, which is more of a B2B model? I think it's too far in the B2C way of thinking right now, and I think we need to balance it out a little bit. I just want to say there's a colleague of mine called Tara Stewart who works for Havas in the US, that I'm going to steal a sentiment of hers in that change is inevitable. So, and I think, if we want to change mindsets, hearts and minds, I think that's all about change. And people are, has negative connotations. People are kind of scared of change. but they see it as an insurmountable mountain. But evolution is a path up that mountain. And I think maybe if we were to just tweak our thinking away from change and more of evolving where we are right now, it could be easier for us to get to where we want to go. I think half of the problem is that we're scared of change.
Mm-hmm. And where do you think the change should start, and who's scared of it?
I think all of us. I think pharma companies are scared of change because it's a very risk-averse industry, and any change comes with a certain amount of fear. I think doctors are crying out for change, but they have limited time and resource, and have they got time to actually adapt to the change, or adding more to their plate? I think the only people that want change are the patients and potentially the partners. So you and I, we're always looking to innovate at agencies and suppliers. And I think we have a mandate as suppliers and partners of pharmaceutical companies to encourage them and keep driving them forward to realize the changes that are going to positively impact all of us, because we're all patients.
Yeah. Well, Keith's sharing his perspective. He says that he's worked in technology for sales and marketing space for many years, and he thinks that ethos of customer first is critical, but most companies are simply adopting content for multiple channels. So they're just doing what they've always done. They're just using it, creating it, repurposing it for different channels. And he says he also thinks we need to engage in a peer-to-peer relationship with our multiple stakeholders, including HCPs, patients, payers. And I tend to agree with Keith. I think every pharma company says we put patient at the center of our core values, but then the behaviors are driven by profit, and senior leaders in the companies are reluctant to change course because they've got a responsibility to respond to shareholder profit. So I kind of think the change needs to really start everywhere, but also more importantly at the C-suite to drive, because whatever C-suite wants and rewards,
Completely, and
behavior changes. Did you say you
definitely, and
completely
I
agree?
am
Yeah.
seeing that.
You have
Completely
seen
agree, and
that,
I
have
am
you?
seeing that change. Yeah, so I'm seeing. I can't say too much. I'm like 3 days into a new job, so I don't really want to trip over myself after
Yeah, I'm
saying something
seeing
that
that.
isn't
I'm
right.
seeing that in some companies as well. They're taking a completely different approach. They're restructuring around what's important, aligning themselves with ACP's need. The focus is on providing a customer experience. I'm saying that maybe one or two companies, they're probably leading on this, but I think maybe everybody else is waiting and watching to see how they model evolve.
Well, I think part of the problem here, it's changing minds, hearts and minds, but it's making it practical. And this is what I was referring to before about the buzzword, in that it has a risk of being a buzzword, and it's a bit of a fluffy cloud at the moment. But how do you make it practical? And that's what my main ambition is in this new role, is to actually make it tangible, not just say, let's be customer centric and put a nice slide deck together, but actually come up with solutions about how we make the data points. Are we actually measuring the satisfaction of customers? How do we do that? How do we actually create the dialogue, as Keith was saying, with our multiple stakeholders, including doctors and patients, etc., to really push that and push us forward?
Yeah. And I think Keith make a point about change management. It is hard work, but often people continue doing what they've always done and trying to bolt change on top of it. What's your view on this? What is it that we should stop doing so instead we can focus on change management?
I was going to come to this later, but I'll talk about it now. In that, if we think of where pharma companies need to be braver, possibly in the world, or in the kind of general work environment, I think there's a big human challenge that pharma has, and that it's not going to be solved overnight. And it comes from the overall culture of the industry, in that if you think back, I've been in the industry for kind of 20 plus years now. And pretty much every 3 years within a pharma company, there's a restructure or a reorganization of some kind. And over a period of time, that's going to erode confidence in the individual, and people are going to be scared of their job for their jobs. So now you've got a collection of people who are putting more energy into protecting themselves than they are putting energy in to benefit the company they work for. And that's not a great balance to have, because then you're getting solutions and, it could be a website, it could be an app, it could be content, it could be whatever that's being created to protect that person, to act as a badge of honor, to get, maintain their job within a restructure, or to, get that promotion that they're looking for, rather than creating something that evolves as we do. We all evolve over time. So we all learn over time, whether we are conscious about it or not. So having solutions that can grow as we grow, can learn as we learn, I think that's vital. But, in order to actually do that, you're going to have to create new circles of safety, as Simon Sinek calls it, where there is an environment built on trust. Failure is accepted, welcomed even. Innovation is embraced, and people feel trusted. And I think until we get to that point, we might see wider pockets of people who are willing to innovate, but I think there needs to be a big shift when it comes to how we handle trust and relationships and things like that within pharma internally.
Yeah, and I think if people are scared of their jobs and they're doing what's required to maintain their position, is a completely different mindset that if you think no matter what you do, you're not going to fail, because that's deemed as learning, experimenting, and evolving. So I think it's a completely different mindset. What do you think companies is anybody actually doing that right? Has anybody got it right to have that environment in the company?
I think there are more innovation labs popping up, and I know they're things that have popped up, every so often for a number of years. But I'm hearing more, and I'm hearing more. Not just a global company has one innovation lab. I'm hearing the kind of local countries have their own innovation teams that, either sit outside of the local team, or they're, very much part, or they're kind of above the brand model, which is a good start. I think I'm seeing more partnerships with the likes of Havas, but not just Havas. You've got Omnicom and others in there as well, who are being pushed more to innovate with their partners, their pharma partners. And I'm seeing more amazing suppliers like yourselves, who are, being put on a stage to talk about where we should get to. And ultimately, we are just a collection of humans working to, benefit humanity in some way. I don't think there's a person who's looking to, do really bad things in normal society. So we're all trying to make a bit of a difference. So let's do that together.
Yeah, I think for me, change creates uncertainty, and nobody can actually predict details of what's going to happen. But what's really important is communication, just explaining why we're doing it, and then keeping people informed. I feel the company leaders have a responsibility to be the kind of like the champion for change, and provide that reassurance, provide that communication, say like, this is where we are now. Maybe we don't know exactly where it's going to lead us, but we're going to go to explore, and we're kind of like doing this together, because if we don't do it, or we're just going to go backwards, we just need to evolve and move forward with it. And along the way, we figure it out. But if there's a big enough why are we doing it, and they communicate what we're doing, then everybody can figure out the how together. But I don't often see that strong leadership coming to communicate it. What happens is people go in the C-suite and like huddle, and they're trying to solve the earth problems, but they don't actually communicate out to the field to let everybody else knows what they're thinking, where they're going. And I think when they don't communicate, that lack of communication creates fear itself, because people always think the worst when they don't know what's happening. So maybe there's
Absolutely.
a role about internal communication to keep people informed. I mean, people
So
are
it's
talking about.
funny.
Yeah, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say, it's funny you talk about that, because I've been learning or trying to educate myself a bit more on communication recently. And I came across a study that was the only study of its kind, or the biggest study of its kind, that matched happiness with health. I think it was Harvard University that did it. And it
Mm-hmm.
covers about 700 odd people. And it's at the moment covered an 80-year period, with descendants of the original group of people now being measured as part of the study. And the main thing that came out of it was to make people happy and engaged and stuff like that from a health point of view, but also a communication point of view. It's relationships is the key
Mm-hmm.
differentiator, a very human thing. There's some stats that came out of it that I'm going to read. So men on average tend to live 12 years longer, and women tend to live 7 years longer if they're, like it says, if they're married, but I think it relates to lasting, strong relationships. If they have a
Mm-hmm.
trusted relationship, then it's proven to prolong life, which is, amazing.
Yeah,
And a really good relationship is built on good communication. And
yeah.
maybe during COVID, we kind of lost that a little bit, because we were all locked into our homes and communicating over digital channels and whatever. I feel as though we're still coming out of that. Even though it's a few years past, we've all got PTSD from COVID still. The world is a bit more of a negative place, and I think there's a love for this summer to be, the 60s had the summer of love. I'd love to see that again, just
Yeah.
to get us back to where we were from a very human relationship point of
Yeah.
view.
I think human
Might be too
relationships.
idealistic, but
I think human relationship is important. I actually think COVID brought us closer because we were suffering together, and I think suffering brings camaraderie in some way as well. You've got a couple of comments from Gurav. It's good to have you here, Gurav, by the way. He says that regression to the mean is a very real danger for any individual who feels that they are innovating beyond the norm, and peers stick to safe zone of operability. Is it operability? I can't even say that words. But yeah,
yeah,
and Laura's contributing, saying that she agrees. If people don't communicate their vision, it is hard to bring people along on the journey. Communication is key to trust. And yeah, I thank you for
absolutely.
that, for sharing that, Laura. Um, I think the norm in pharma is when they don't know what's happening, they go into their cave rather than coming out openly saying, we don't know where we're going, but the purpose we have is too big. We want to save people's life, and this is the next stop. Let's figure it out together. I think they would bring people more with them rather than just keeping everybody in the dark, because that creates uncertainty. So maybe you can
Yeah,
echo that in Havas Health and You, to the leaders
I'll
you work
try.
with. Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah,
yeah. So
absolutely.
I was going to say, what what would be if you could change the industry in one positive way? What would, and that would be your legacy? What would you change?
It would definitely to um, make customer experience and that customer centricity actually tangible and practical, and get rid of this ethereal, even though I can't even say the word, but the non-tangible view that maybe is out there at the moment of it being another buzzword, because I really don't think it is.
Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you a different question. I feel really passionate about field teams. I think
Mm-hmm.
pharma companies don't often treat the field team as an internal customer. What do you think companies can do differently to bring that customer experience for the internal staff, not just field teams, but for marketing and everyone else to align? Because we talk about all these silos, but if companies internally applied customer experience methodology, then the silos would vanish, wouldn't they?
They absolutely would. And I think something that I don't see very much is, you get marketing teams that create marketing content that and content for reps that they push out. But how many pharma companies actually engage the reps where the main knowledge is being held to actually create that content and qualify it and feedback, on that content to make it even more relevant from a grassroots level. I'd love to see more of that. I'd also, I think we've all heard stories of a rep sitting in a waiting room to see a doctor, and because they're being measured via the CRM, they're skimming through their 20 slides that they're mandated to go through in the waiting room. So the 7 minutes they have with a doctor, they can actually talk to them, even though the doctor is emotionally drained and mentally drained and whatever, and probably doesn't really want to speak to the rep. There's still all this rubbish that they've got to go through beforehand to get to the actual meaningful part, that coming back to it, and it's going to be a bit woolly, but is the relationship, is the trust. Pharma is way more competitive now. There has to be a loyalty, there has to be a trust, there has to be a focus. Areas like rare disease, specialty, it's a battleground. So the differentiator is going to be, what are you doing for the doctor to help them with their problems? And sometimes that's just listening.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think if you truly focus on helping them with a pain point, that's when they see us as an ally rather than somebody's there to sell them something. If you truly take solutions to them, and the solution help them alleviate their pain points, then we are seen as a trusted advisor, not just a pharmaceutical sales or medical representative.
Well, this might be a bit controversial, but if I could do possibly one thing, I would actually drop the name sales rep, and I would start using pharma rep instead, as in you are representing the pharmaceutical company, not the sales target.
Yeah, I think we're beginning to use the field teams as a terminology, because it doesn't matter whether you're MSL, CAM, you are a field team, and we all representing the respective companies. So it's like field teams is an interface with the HCPs. Maybe we need to change the terminology. I agree with you. I think the different countries have different connotation to sales. In US, they love it. In UK, there's a negative connotation associated with the terminology of sales. So maybe it's better to have a more generic terminology. It's been absolutely amazing to have you here, Rob. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your insight. Thank you for reminding us the importance of relationship as a pillar for building trust, but also for kind of like yeast that could create that customer experience. And I hope you would do great things in Havas. I know it's been only 3 days you started the job, but I think with the vision and the attention you have with people, I'm sure you can do great things. I'll
try.
Yeah, go on.
I was just going to say, I'll try my best.
No, I've got great hopes for you. And I was going to say, I'm just going to, conscious of time, it's been great to have your contribution and feedback in the chat. Thank you, Keith, Gaurav, and Laura. And I just want to kind of wrap up our session today by just saying that we shared our recipe because I felt we got our arms around this digital transformation and communicating using online content maybe a little bit earlier, because I moved to US and started working remotely in 2017 when it was not so fashionable. So we shared our recipe and through Cheemia ReSET, and we did some research and we tried to make it fun and make it learning engaging, and we focused on the human side of the digital transformation. And we found in a very short period of time, we were able to increase field teams' confidence, quality and quantity of their engagement to the point that compared to pre-pandemic was 5 times more. We won several awards for disruptive innovation, and even last week we were featured in Digital First magazine, which was great. I'm developing new content for the field teams, but also I'm writing a book around this topic. It's called The Omni Advantage, and is designed for commercial leaders in pharma to be able to lead their organization through this change and focus on the people that perhaps we left behind. So if you're looking for a solution to help your field teams gain confidence and embrace digital tools and online content, or you just want to have a chat to figure out what your challenges are, get in touch, because we would love to hear from you. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, Rob, for being an amazing guest in our Digital Transformation Series, and I'll look forward to catching up with you all soon.
Thanks, Merhnaz. It's been great.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye.